This is Tuesday, December 4th, 336 days until the 2008 presidential election. There were not already enough proof that facts and evidence are of no consequence to this White House, that the Bush administration appears determined for military confrontation with Iran before it leaves office, and that the president seems to think himself a genius because he knows where Iran is. Today came conclusive evidence about all three. Our fifth story on the countdown, faith-based intelligence. Mr. Bush at a morning news conference arguing that Iran is every bit the threat it once was, despite the damning new intelligence report, which concludes the Iranian regime halted its nuclear weapons program more than 4 years ago. The national intelligence estimate dominating question time with Mr. Bush at his previous news conference on October 17th. You might recall that the president had said people interested in avoiding World War III should be doing all they could to keep Iran from making a nuclear weapon. Hype threats much, Mr. President?
When you talked about Iraq, you and others in the administration talked about a mushroom cloud. Then there were no WMD in Iraq. When it came to Iran, you said on October 17th, you warned about the prospect of World War III. When months before you made that statement, this intelligence about them suspending their weapons program back in 2003 had already come to light to this administration. So can't you be accused of hyping this threat, and don't you worry that that undermines U.S. credibility?
David, I don't want to contradict an august reporter such as yourself, but I was made aware of the NIE last week. In August, I think it was Mike McConnell came in and said, we have some new information. He didn't tell me what the information was. He did tell me it was going to take a while to analyze. Why would you take time to analyze new information? One, you want to make sure it's not disinformation. You want to make sure the piece of intelligence you have is real. And secondly, they want to make sure they understand the intelligence they gathered. If they think it's real, then what does it mean? And it wasn't until last week that I was briefed on the NIE that is now public.
Well, just last week, that depends on what the definition of aware is. As one highly reliable intelligence community source told Harper's Magazine yesterday, the NIE has been in substantially the form in which it was finally submitted for more than 6 months. Plus, earlier this month, a similar report revealed that the vice president, Mr. Cheney, had been holding up publication of the NIE for the better part of a year. And that leaves you skeptical about the president's claim. It did the same for Jim Axelrod of CBS News.
Are you saying at no point while the rhetoric was escalating as World War III was making it into conversation, at no point nobody from your intelligence team or your administration was saying, maybe you want to back it down a little bit?
No, nobody ever told me that.
Nobody ever told him that. And more astounding, he did not ask. With that claim, the birth of yet another scandal in which the question needs to be asked, what did the president know and when did he know it? If only Howard Baker were collecting royalties on that line. Even Mr. Bush's own national security advisor disputes the timeline. Stephen Hadley telling reporters yesterday that the president had been told in August or September about new intelligence indicating Iran had halted its weapons program. Mr. Hadley, however, the first to float the ludicrous news story that intelligence officials did not reach any conclusions about the true nature of the Iranian threat until last Tuesday, and that the president and vice president were not briefed until Wednesday. Even more ludicrous that the administration's policy towards Iran will not be morphing to match the new intelligence. Even Fox News seemed incredulous.
Mr. President, thank you. I'd like to ask for one clarification and one question. If
sure.
That's okay.
Depends on what the clarification is.
The clarification is, are you saying that this NIE will not lead to a change in U.S. policy toward Iran or a shift in focus?
I'm saying that I believe before the NIE that Iran was dangerous, and I believe after the NIE that Iran is dangerous. So our policy remains the same. I see a danger. And many in the world see the same danger. This report is not okay, everybody needs to relax and quit report. This is a report that says what has happened in the past could be repeated, and that the policies used to cause the regime to halt are effective policies, and let's keep them up. Let's continue to work together. Question, please.
And watch out for those Carthaginians. They may make a comeback, too. I have a question, though, Mr. President. Any chance you will now be taking credit for Iran having abandoned the development of nuclear materials?
One thing is for certain. The NIA talks about how a carrot and stick approach can work. And this is heartening news to people who believe that, on the one hand, we should exert pressure, And on the other hand, we should provide the Iranians a way forward.
This is like a guy falling off a roof into a campfire with the force of the fall putting out the fire, and then the guy concludes the best means of firefighting is falling off a roof. From analogy to psychology, the president's now traditional once a news conference moment of ick at the end of this morning's Q&A session, following questions about the president's body language, the reporter saying he seemed dispirited and about whether Mr. Bush might now be facing a credibility gap with the American people.
And so, you know, kind of psychology 101 ain't working. It's just not working. You know, I understand the issues. I clearly see the problems. And I'm going to use the NIE to continue to rally the international community for the sake of peace. Thank you very much.
Tip your waiters. Time now to call on our own Richard Wolff, senior White House correspondent for Newsweek magazine. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
So why did the White House finally release this report? I mean, obviously it has not made them look good. Did the delay, did it give them time to formulate this new strategy that its apparent total failure to understand what was actually happening in Iran was some sort of positive byproduct of trying to get Iran to stop doing something it had stopped doing 4 years ago?
Well, first of all, what a great headline that is. I understand the issues. I mean, that's right up there with I'm still relevant. Look, the White House is trying to put the best face on this, but it is deeply damaging to their policy, to their credibility, as if they didn't have a credibility problem already, of course, after Iraq. And when it comes down to the NIE, there are a couple of ways of looking at it. One is this whole sort of cat and mouse game of when did the intelligence come to light? What's the semantic game about the NIE and the conclusions the president got? But another way to look at it is that this is the intelligence community backed up by the Defense Secretary, the Secretary of State, really saying enough with the rhetoric, we've got to take a different approach. And the hawks have got to back down. And really, the hawks have left this ship. They've gone to different jobs, and there's nobody left in the vice president's circle who could stop this NIE from coming out.
The sub-headline here, the story that the intelligence community only figured out what Iran was not up to last Tuesday, and the president and the vice president didn't hear about it till last Wednesday. Is anybody buying that, and why does that need to be sold so hard?
Well, again, listen to what the president said. He said, I only found out about the NIE. They didn't hear about the conclusions. I mean, this is a president who gets briefed all the time. It feeds into the policy and the public statements. And really, for a long time, I've been saying on the show, and others have noted it too, the public rhetoric of this administration did not match what they were saying privately about the diplomacy, or, for instance, about the way they were going to deal with other nations. I mean, the two tracks didn't match, and frankly, that led a lot of us to believe that they didn't have the evidence. They were approaching it very differently behind the scenes, and look, we can now see why. It's not about when they knew. It's really about why they were making public statements that they knew privately didn't match up to the facts.
Well, that ties into this other question. The president's claim that in August the DNI, Mr. McConnell, Admiral McConnell, it's Mike and not John, told him we have some new information, but did not tell him what the information was, and the president didn't ask. Now, apart from the fact that when that was stated, that it probably caused my friend John McConnell from ABC Radio to spit coffee through his nose, this would not be the first instance in which giving this president the benefit of the doubt means accepting the idea that he's an intellectual lightweight who doesn't ask that question. How bad have things become when the most charitable thing you can say about the man who is briefed every morning by the CIA and at various other times by every other intelligence agency in the book that he did not have a clue about this remarkable 180 on what our intel was saying to him and to this country about Iranian nukes?
Yeah, you think McConnell's a difficult name, just think about Ahmadinejad. Look, there's a problem here of what the president is really saying. Now, I've spoken to the president lots of times, on and off the record. He is fascinated by every minute detail about the Iranian regime, every last story about who's up and who's down, what the quality of the intelligence is. And clearly, what we're seeing from this NIE is that there are new sources of information about Iran. It's generating a new kind of analysis of what they're up to, both on the security side of things and also on the political front. So it just beggars belief to think that this president, who has in the past said that they didn't have good intelligence